A very big weekend then for political news in Central and Eastern Europe. What did you take away?
Yes, Anna, and in the space of 48 hours, there really has been this big gravitational change happening in Eastern Central Europe, and you're also seeing this realignment happening in European politics. In Austria, of course, you have Sebastian Kurz, who, as you know, this was the big political start of the European right. This was the wonder boy of European conservative politics in the EU, now having to step aside. Of course, the question is whether or not that is going to translate into change in Austria. A lot of the political commentary already in the country is suggesting that it's not. The man that is going to replace him is a career diplomat who's very close to Sebastian Kurz. Sebastian Kurz is still very popular with the Austrian voter, and perhaps this is more about pulling the strings from the sidelines. The other big story is, of course, what is happening in Poland. Anna, coincidentally, I was in Slovakia this weekend on a conference about Eastern European politics, Central European politics, and this was really the big topic in the room. What's happening in the country, that decision from the Polish Constitutional Court to say we're going to sideline potentially European law and install our national one. We think that should be the leading principle in the country. Well, that's a big, of course, topic. There's a lot of conversation as to whether or not that could lead to some kind of exit from the country, from the European Union. It also means that perhaps it's not going to receive the funding from the European Commission in the next few weeks. But then yesterday you had the demonstration, a lot of Polish citizens going out on the streets to say we want to stay in the European Union, and that is worth factoring. When you look at the Polish public opinion and the Polish population, this is still a country that is predominantly huge numbers in favor of the EU. So this is more about a national story and the rule of law and the clash potentially with Brussels, with the government in Poland, suggesting that Brussels is having too much of a big say on matters that fundamentally should be national rulings.
Good morning, Maria. As you say, we've been talking about this for a long time, this idea of Poland leaving the EU. It's been this long-running story. What is the next kind of factor we're looking for in this? And how kind of severe, how realistic do people think it is that Poland will actually leave the EU?
Well, what's really happening in the country, and this is where it gets interesting, is that no one in Europe, not just in Poland, but across the European Union, even the Eurosceptics no longer campaign on this idea of we're going to leave the European Union or we're going to leave the euro. What they campaign on now is to say we want to stay in the European Union, but we want to change it from within. The problem is, Mark, as you know, the rule of law, fundamental values in the European Union, this is something that the Commission right now says is a red line for this commission. You have to not just partake in the single market as a trading bloc, but you also have to share the values. Now, is Poland going to leave the European Union? The likely answer to that question is no. But this is a big clash on the limits, perhaps, of national competences over European rulings. And it's also a big question mark in terms of the funding that the country was expecting to get from the European Recovery Fund and from the European Commission as part of the new budget. So, of course, it does mean that potentially we could see European, but also Polish assets come under pressure because of this ruling. You had a note already from UniCredit suggesting that perhaps we could see that translating into the currency. And of course, when you look at the inflation picture and just the macro picture in the country, inflation is really surging. The government is really struggling to keep that economy going, but also to tame down that pressure on prices. And now you have this political side feeding into this, so it does make Polish politics very unstable in the short term.